Okay, we're going to look at how we can operate and manipulate the equalization, the equalizer, or EQ here on our X32. It's kind of the last main section of effects that you're going to deal with on any channel. And it's this main box section. In some ways, it's maybe the most intimidating individual section because you've got all these buttons, all these lines, and all these LEDs and encoders. It's crazy. But I will not be explaining EQ techniques or like exactly how every single part of it works. I'm just going to show you how you can move the EQ curves around. So first, let's imagine we want to change the EQ on channel 1, vocal 1. You first need to select that channel, and remember, when you hit that select button, now all of these lights and stuff up here will be controlling the channel 1 parameters. If you want to do the EQ on the acoustic guitar here, channel 6, you hit select, you'll notice the lights all change because now this is what channel 6 is doing on all of those effects. So we're on channel 1, as we said we were going to do, lead vocal. You can adjust all the EQ settings in two different ways. Option 1 is to make adjustments here and use these knobs to adjust these changes. Or you can hit this view button, which is probably the way you want to do it. This view button, when you hit that, you will now see the EQ curve on the main screen. Most of the time we tend to use more subtractive EQ on channels here. What that means is where you're subtracting out the problem areas and kind of forming your curve based on subtracting things rather than starting with a flat line across here and then boosting stuff that you want more of. So this is kind of the shape the curve has currently taken, but let's figure out how we can mess with all these. All right. First thing, to select the band that you want to be working with, you have 4 bands, and actually I'm going to do kind of a hybrid model here of switching between all the different bands. So I like to use these buttons here because they're tactile, so you can control the high frequencies, the high band, the mid-highs or the high mids, the low mids, and the low frequencies. If you want to do that same function over here, you've got this encoder on the far right that's telling you select EQ, and you can move that around to select high, high mid, or low. But I like to use the buttons. It's kind of nice to have some tactile response to it. So we'll start with the low frequencies. So right now, whatever I do is going to be controlling just the low, this kind of light blue color, number 1. So that's what I'm selecting. So if I use these knobs over here, they will impact this low frequency guy right here. So here are your options kind of for each, oops, switch the channel. It's back. Here are your options for each one. I'll go through the buttons sequentially. First is mode, and this is where you can select what kind of shape the curve will take. VEQ is more of like, it creates more of a bell curve, a smoother, wider sweep. PE, if you hit this again, it'll go down to, low cut, and that's where it just lops off the frequencies lower than whatever you're putting. So when it's a low cut, you'll notice how you got this blue 1, this band, and everything below that just lopped right off. So that's low cut. Your other option is a low shelf, and the difference there is instead of reducing or increasing like a bell curve sort of shape, it makes a shelf, so it increases or decreases everything to the left of our low band. So a shelf can kind of like the shape here would imply. You can either bring up or bring down all the stuff next to it, to the left of it. And then PEQ is more of a tight shape, more triangular, more angular, specific to a very small set of frequencies. Okay, so we've got, just to review that, VEQ is a wider sweep kind of arc. Low cut just chops off everything lower than whatever point you choose. A shelf will increase or lower, to the left of whatever you're choosing. And PEQ, PEQ is the tighter arc. Okay. So once you've selected the kind of curve you want, I think this was on PEQ to begin with. You can see here if I go to from PEQ, VEQ, you can see it got a little wider. The yellow chop got a little wider. Here's the cut, and here's the shelf. You can see how it kind of makes a shelf. It goes over and then drops off. So yeah, I'll put this on PEQ again. Here are your options. First thing, you got this is a low cut frequency. This is separate from your low band. Your low cut can be a separate item, and you can turn that on and off via this low cut button. So there's kind of some EQ happening in this section, but anyway, so yeah, that's kind of its own beast. Then you'll notice you have the frequency, and these are in the controlling the low frequency now. So you've got where you want your band 1 to be located. The frequency will change that. We'll move it left to right, let's say. You can also adjust the frequency via this knob, and it does the same thing. So you can pick which knob you want to use. Next parameter is your gain. That's how much you are increasing or decreasing the signal at whatever frequency you're choosing. So you can see how the decrease is moving right and left there. The gain, you can turn that up, meaning you're going to boost the signal at that frequency level, or it'll decrease that frequency level. You can also adjust the gain over on this side. This knob here controls that exact same function. Again, it just depends on what you get best, I suppose. Next control here is the Q. Q stands for, I don't know what Q stands for, but it does affect the tightness, the wideness of how many frequencies are affected. So if the Q is extremely high, it's more surgical. It will impact a very small band of frequencies and not too many others. If the Q is extremely a smaller number, it'll affect a wide range of frequencies, starting from the kind of center axis and then moving out slowly. So the Q can be whatever amount you want, however many frequencies you want to affect, however wide you want that cut or the boost to be. The Q can also be changed over here by, let's see, it also seems, oh, it's kind of handy. So on this knob here, when you rotate the Q this way, you notice how it expands the lights in all directions. That means it's a very wide area of effect. And then here is the higher Q, that is to say, a narrow effect on the band. So you can set that to your taste, and that's how you control the low frequency. Now let's say I want to control this low-mid frequency here. Well, I could either click the low-mid button, or I could select the band over here on this far right encoder. I'm actually just going to say, oh, one more thing. You can also change the shape of the curve, the PEQ, VEQ, all that stuff. You can also do that via this encoder as well. High shelf, all that stuff. Low shelf, fun times. So we're going to keep moving on though. All right, so we go to our low-mid section. I want to use these buttons because they're handy and they're right there. And I like them. They feel better to me. So you got the low-mid. Again, you can change the mode. You can change how much you're boosting or decreasing on that band. You can choose which frequency you're going to be at. You can move it left to right to a certain degree. And you can change the Q, how tight or how, actually it's hard to see there. If we raise that way up. The Q can be really wide or really narrow. So again, you can make all these changes at your discretion. Oh, I need to bring that back down. That's kind of ridiculous up there. Anyway, yeah, so you can change the low mid, and you know which one's selected because notice the color, the box is filled in with color. So I'm selecting 2 right now. I can now select the third band, high mid, And now it tells you, it also gives you the numbers if you're more of like a visual number person to know what the gain and the frequency are currently set at. It gives you those numbers as well. So you can mess with the high, mid, or the high frequencies. And so that's how you can adjust all the parameters on all the bands of EQ. And again, I'll probably, just for your own reference, usually under the board we keep this handy dandy sheet of paper. It's just an EQ cheat sheet. It tells you kind of at which frequency some of these different instruments live and where they are primarily located on the sound spectrum. Remember, human hearing is from, on the low end, about 20 hertz all the way up to 20,000 kilohertz in a ideal setting. But anyway, so this kind of tells you where most of the instruments that you might run into, where they reside. And it also gives you some handy adjectives to let you know where you might want to boost or cut in a given sound. So the way to read this chart, for example, if you have a vocal, a tenor, let's see up here on the top, if you have a tenor, their voice is going to be primarily in the 130 to 500 hertz range. That's where you're going to hear it like the heart of their frequencies, so to speak. And if you want to add fullness, you might want to boost 120 hertz. But if it's sounding too full or too boomy, you could reduce the 120 to 200 hertz range. And so they have different adjectives: boxy, nasally, presence, all that good stuff. Yeah, so you can use this as a reference if you're messing around during rehearsal. Might not be handy to mess with it during a Sunday service because it's happening so fast. But yeah, that is how you mess with EQ. And like I said, this sheet is usually kind of like under the board or somewhere in the area. That's how you adjust EQ for a channel, and how you can improve the sound using the equalizer.